What's up, world? Welcome to Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000. Want to welcome you again to another edition of Family Talk with my pops, A. Wayne Carter. Pops, welcome back and thank you once again. How are you, sir?
Doing pretty well. Had a nice week. How about you?
Man, it's been very nice. Got a lot of rain that the garden needed, and everything is appreciating that. And we even got some squash and starting to eat out the garden. I heard, you told me you were eating fried green tomatoes, so those are all blessings, and you know what I'm saying. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
certainly grateful for that. Um, yeah. How is your garden looking, by the way?
The tomatoes are looking good. Okra's up. I've got a bunch of grapes in my grape vineyard, so they're all pretty well.
That's nice. That's
They
nice.
were kind of they were kind of dormant there till we started getting this rain the last 2 weeks, and that's just come up.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we needed the rain, and then it really came on. I kind of got behind in my mowing, but kind of got caught up on all that as well. So in a good space. Um, Recap a little bit of where we're at in your life. We're working in 1979, coming up on the fall. You're about to start law school, so you're 25 years old. You finished your active enlistment military service and have transitioned to this reserve component and working full time in the construction industry. Is that accurate?
Yep, yep.
And living in Smyrna, Tennessee, right? And it seems like life's kind of going on pretty well. I mean, is there anything that maybe stands out that we might have missed through that you want to highlight?
No, I think we've covered more details than I can hardly remember.
Okay, okay. Well, so just looking back at our talk last week, um, it was kind of some interesting things. I mean, you have been able to kind of get your bachelor's, navigate your undergraduate studies, and also been able to roll through your enlistment, non-commissioned service. Is that maybe correct? And then you transitioned to a commissioned officer, um, and really the job, the way you described it, you said it was a really nice job in as far as in your reserve for the military of what you were doing, um, and even at that lieutenant spot, you didn't have a whole lot of control. That you were just
None.
relaying information from the hierarchy, right?
Right. Yeah.
And you're working in a career that is familiar. I mean, it's not something that you were coming home to something new. I mean, this is kind of what you grew up. This was the family trade, even, right? Is that fair to
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
Um, and then getting accepted to law school. Do you remember how that felt at 25 years old? I mean, it's 1979. Jimmy Carter's president, maybe, is that right? And life is good. What's going on? The unions are strong. Tell me what you remember about that time.
Well, and I think about it now, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
But at that point, no, I was young and strong and ready to go, excited to go to law school. Uh, yeah, it was all good stuff. I think
Cool.
yeah.
All right. And so let's get in maybe to the fall, coming into law school in the fall. What did you know? Was there any like an orientation process or an onboarding process to law school? And walk me through that.
Well, what I really remember was the very first night of law school, the very first class, contract. and the dean of the school taught the class. So he used that first class kind of as an introduction to the law school and what to expect and what to do. Uh, and what I remember was one of the first things he said. It was probably, I don't know, 60, 70 people in the class starting out with. And he says, look to your right, look to your left. Those people will not be here when you graduate. And I'm thinking, well, that's not a very positive outlook on life. And I remember thinking to myself, I know I'm not the most intelligent, smartest person here, but I'm not going to quit. They may tell me I can't come back. They may tell you, Wayne, you're just not smart enough to be here. Go home. And if that happens, it happens. But I am not going to quit. And that was just kind of the way it was. And to be honest with you, when I look back at it, we graduated probably 20 or 30 people, and he was right. A lot of them weren't there.
Okay. Do you remember anything about the coursework?
Oh, yeah. Gosh. The contracts was a lot of the book itself, but there also was a number of cases they had to go read. I spent a lot of time in libraries, reading cases. And contracts was a lot of casework. Torts, which is like the civil law, the civil cases, with a lot of casework, and most of all, criminal law and constitutional law with a lot of casework. So for every hour I spent in class, I'm literally probably spent 5 or 6 hours in a library.
And so a lot of reading.
A lot.
A lot of reading and a lot of, like you said, with the LSTAT kind of synthesis of thought through logic, right? Like logical thought. Is that correct?
Well, I never thought about it like that, but I suspect that's what the Supreme Court justices were trying to, most of the cases we read were from either the U.S. Supreme Court or the Tennessee State Supreme Court, and I want to think that Supreme Court justices are using logic based upon their understanding of the Constitution. So yeah, I don't think I thought about it like that at the time.
And the way I look at the law, and I may be wrong, and that's why I want to ask you, I kind of think about when, and I would never do this because I'm not a lawyer, and I would never suggest to anybody to try to represent themselves or anybody else. That part's illegal. But if to think about those things, I think about what the law is and how I might interpret what the language or the letter of the law, and then kind of correspond that with, like you're talking about that case, the precedents of the courts. Is that a correct way of saying that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And was there any research training done as far as teaching you how to do the research? And I mean, the annotated codes of Tennessee, that can be difficult for people to navigate. Was there any kind of research training that you recall, or was it just like, hey, here's the book, and maybe there was some in reading those books, maybe there was the research training in that, and you had to transpose that to the library?
Yeah, I don't remember specifically any training for research. Having been a political science major in undergraduate work, part of that was reading case law and knowing, how to find a case in the law library. So I sort of knew that from undergraduate work.
Right. Yeah.
I don't really remember a specific course or instructions in law school about. Now we did have a class in legal research and writing. That was more the way to write legally, way to write a legal brief, and it's, I don't remember somebody saying, "Oh, here's how you go to the library and find a case."
Yeah. Did you already enjoy reading? Were you a pretty heavy reader throughout your life?
Not really. I if I enjoyed it, yes, but just as far as like reading a textbook or reading uh, some military manuals, no, I didn't enjoy that. But I really enjoyed parts of the study of law. The very first part. I mean, you're excited the first year, first semester, and so reading those cases, and it could have been anything, but it was contracts, it was torts, and it was, I think I had criminal law the first semester, maybe the second year. But those were exciting. I think just the idea of being there for me was exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you said that you for the most part you enjoyed your undergrad work. I mean, it what maybe not until you got into those upper levels, and that's pretty. That I think that's for everybody until you get into more of your focus courses. It can be school can be more tedious, and then when you are kind of passionate or interested in something, the study's fun, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
that how you
absolutely.
felt about it?
Yeah.
And so how much we, and I know later on, I'm sure we'll get more to it, but how much of the classes were lecture based, and how much was maybe a discussion based, or was there any discussion based? What were the classes like?
It was all lecture,
All lecture.
all lecture.
And what would that kind of consist of?
Well, of course, it depends upon the instructor. Like Dean Lackey was the guy that taught contract. Like I said, he was the dean of the school at the time, and he was pretty much just go through the book, and and that, and you really had to be prepared, because in the middle of his going through the book, he may come across a particular case, and he might say, "Well, Mr. Carter, what's your take on this case?" And
Okay.
so, if you're not ready, it's just not good. And so that didn't happen that often in contracts. On the other side of that, in criminal law, the guy that was the district attorney in Nashville, uh, oh gosh, so I ended up working for this guy. But anyway, he um, was a fairly famous prosecutor in the state, and I think his dad had been a fairly big politician, Tom Shriver, general. He was the attorney general in Nashville. He taught criminal law, and he taught a lot of cases that he actually did. And it really made it interesting. I mean, he went on for a whole uh, class or two talking about the String Bean murder case, which you may not remember, but String Bean was a Grand Ole Opry star who got murdered, and it was a big deal. And so that was uh, I think that's probably got me interested in criminal law, which is obviously where I ended up at.
Hmm. And so, what would the exams be like? Is it you would go through the lectures, whether for the book and these case studies, and then maybe what like is it an exam? Maybe a few case studies pick at random, and then you are assigned a position, or give me your position and support it. What did that look like?
Well, that and a lot of it was hypothetical situations,
Okay.
and how do you apply the law to this particular case and or this particular thing, and those kind of things. Uh, what we did not get a lot of, I don't remember any of them, which would have been more helpful taking the bar. We didn't do I don't remember any test that had to do with multi-state, or multiple choice questions. It just didn't happen. Needed that. They do a better job of that now in law school because half of the bar exam is that.
Yeah.
And so, uh, but that's just, we didn't have that. But I learned a lot of law, and I was able to write. I think I'm a pretty good writer now when it comes to legal briefs and when it comes to like military manuals. But it's a different type of writing than a novel. And
Yeah.
so,
And yeah, so there's a lot of different types of writing. You said like a novel, and then there's scientific writing, and there's academic writing, and different styles. We all know that, but so tell me more about legal writing and kind of why it's so important.
well, you've got a situation, say hypothetical case, and that situation fundamentally are facts. What are the facts of the case? Um, and so you take these facts, and then you are to take one side or the other in this lawsuit, and so you want to argue what supports the facts in favor of your particular case or your client as it goes, and so you got to find, you want to find some statutory law and or some case law that supports your position. And so the way you generally write that is to say, okay, here are the facts, A, B, C, D. Next part of the writing would be, here's the law. Then the final thing is conclusion, and that conclusion is how these facts support your position in the facts. It's kind of logical if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah, and so there's a distinct structure, right?
Correct. Correct.
And part of that structure is even to the point of where it's filed and kind of setting all that stuff too, which is designated by the judge in each court. Is that correct?
You're talking about where the brief is actually,
Like,
put in the record. Yeah. Well, of course you're in court, and each court has a clerk, and clerk keeps up with all the paperwork. And each
well,
clerk
okay.
has to
Let me back up just for a second. Then I kind of said how I viewed looking at law. I guess some of the most important things in when it comes to law and dealing with the legal system, it is what court you're in, right, and the rules of the court.
Well,
Right.
those are big areas, and there's rules of procedure, criminal rules of procedure, and there's also civil rules of procedure. And within those procedural things, there's also rules of evidence. What evidence becomes, and quite honestly, evidence is probably the most important class you'll take in law school, because you got to know how to, if I've got this fact, how do I make it relevant, and how do I get it in as evidence? And there's a lot of rules of it. And for example, hearsay evidence. Fundamentally, the idea of hearsay is pretty simple. If you didn't see it, smell it, hear it, taste it, or touch it, then you didn't observe it. You got it from somebody else. That's hearsay. That's not admissible. However, there are a multitude of exceptions to the hearsay rule, and that's where the class becomes interesting, and the cases from the courts of how to interpret those exceptions.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I guess we could spend a lot of time.
I get fired up about that. I enjoy that. That's good stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
so it's
that right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me, looking and reading those things, because it's similar to scientific writing in that you kind of present a background, which is the facts of the situation. Then you present these other known things that you know happen as far as maybe theories and mathematical equations that support certain things, and then you relate them both throughout the discussion, right? And so there's a little bit of similarity there, but it's just it's interesting to me, and that because it seems very important for that structure, for objectivity in the law. So any if it came up on appeal, any judge could look at this brief and be able to flow through it, right? And all those things.
And if you don't put it in that context, in that manner, it's probably not going to be read.
Yeah,
it's probably going to be sent back.
And also, and then when it gets to it, and like you're talking about now, in that practical matter, if you are not able to efficiently navigate the rules, you're not going to be an effective lawyer, because whether you have rightness or justice on your side, if you are not able to effectively communicate that in the structure, it's not going to be accepted, right? Right. So yeah. So you got to know what court you're supposed to be in, what court you're in. You got to know the rules of the court.
That sounds pretty simple.
Yeah.
But I was just thinking about a situation that I had before I retired from the DA's office, where this person actually was become abusive toward the state clerk. And I went to talk to this person, the court clerk in the state court, and I was trying to explain to the guy, hear what this guy had, his complaint was. And I said, well, and he was not a lawyer, didn't have a lawyer, and he didn't understand. And I said, well, sir, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with you, but you're in the wrong court. You need to be in federal court. This is a federal issue you're worried about.
Yeah, right. And you can just be, as a citizen or somebody that's needing access to the courts, if you don't file things properly, you're just wasting your own time and resources in something that's not going to work out. Now, one thing we kind of talked about last time, and to me it maybe connects to this a little bit, is the fact that when you were going through your military service, all your aptitude tests kind of led towards the hard sciences, or even the STEM, maybe what we might call STEM path now, science, technology, all that. Do you think that having maybe that kind of mindset innately helped you in the law, and you were like, okay, this is the structure, and so I can work within this, right? And being already kind of having that logical mind frame with being good at math and kind of having that kind of preconditioning. Do you think that translated into the law any?
I don't know. I don't really. What I see happening is looking back, and I think I thought this at the time, is, I didn't really see math as my strong suit, and therefore I didn't ever pursue it academically, but somehow the military did, and they sent me particularly the nuclear, biological, and chemical school was very complicated and difficult, and I did that. And so I think I come with the attitude, I can do whatever I want to do. I said, it's a matter of me just working hard enough.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's a really good takeaway from that. Wow. And so you feel like, as particularly after what the dean said, it's just like, well, I mean, I can get through it as long as they don't put me out. I'm sure that I've gone through undergrad. I've gone through basic training. I've gone through all these years of active service. It's really just a continuation of a lifestyle, but instead of working for the military full time, you're working in the private industry, and you've got a part-time job with the military. right?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
It's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's dead on. Something I tell the boys that your father told me um, is nothing worth having comes without hard work, and it just seems like that's just something that just is just a part of life. And if you can't get out and kind of put the rubber to the road and kind of put in the elbow grease, right? It doesn't the kind of the mental aptitude, which you know, you're kind of hard on yourself a little bit when you talk about maybe your academic or your intellectual strength, and that's maybe here or there. I'm with you. You on something you said that was interesting. You talked about how you weren't necessarily academically strong, particularly in your early undergrad career, and I identify with that too. And I'm somewhat surprised uh, that some of these places let me in to study with
Yeah,
them, but
right.
they act like they appreciate me being there. So
Yeah.
I sure appreciate them. Um, but the work ethic, you know what I mean, and being able to put the nuts to bolts, right? Because man, it couldn't be much harder than driving those screw nails without
Yeah.
pneumatics, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah. It feels like, and maybe I'm getting older and I'm being critical of the younger generation, but it seems like some of that is lost, and this idea of go to college and get a job and be rich, and it's just like that, or even become an influencer now, or whatever online. And I think that what maybe folks miss is that those influencers online are putting a lot of work into that, right? We're doing this, we're just kind of kicking around this, having fun with this thing. But these folks that are really successful at this are really putting some work into it, right? It's not anything you're going to be successful at or that's going to be worth having is going to take some work. Would you agree with that?
And I think if an individual wants to go beyond just being a mechanical uh, key puncher, I think it's one, and I'm not a really have a lot of knowledge on computers and stuff, but it's one thing for me to be able to open the computer and do whatever I need to do to communicate with you and those kind of things. I think it's a whole nother ball game to be able to program and make those kind of things happen.
Sure.
So
Oh yeah, it's certainly beyond me. All right, well, so we really didn't get very far in your life, but we really talked a lot about you getting into law school, and I'd like to take another pause because you really just get started, and then all of a sudden you've got a child coming along, and I want to talk about that just a little bit and maybe try intro to that because you mentioned to me before that you even thought about dropping out of law school yourself because of the knowing that a child was coming on. I mean, and I can understand that's a pretty stressful thing. Kind of tell me a little bit. Tell me how. I mean, don't tell me how that came about. Tell me how that discussion came. What it was like getting that news, and where you were at, and all about that.
well, and as you just mentioned, I really when found out that Rachel was on the way, uh, in the back of my mind, okay, I got to do whatever I need to make sure this child is supported. My focus in life has now got to get off of me and onto this child. How am I going to be responsible for this child? And I and really had some serious heart conversations uh, with myself and your mother, and that was pretty much it. About that. But what happened, and your mother was really supportive of me not quitting. And so what we ended up doing that after that first semester is selling our house, going and living in Wilson County because Marie's mom and dad had gone. I think that they'd gone somewhere. I don't know whether they were traveling a lot or whether Jim was still working. But anyway, they had a vacant house that they built, and so we ended up living there and selling, selling our house. It didn't have that mortgage and all that kind of stuff going on to be able to save money to do that. But yeah, that was a gut wrenching experience, and I may have mentioned the only exam I ever totally failed was the first exam in law school, which happened the very next night after Rachel was born.
Hmm.
I'm thinking, gosh, maybe I'm not smart enough, and I bore down and actually and ended up doing okay. But boy, that few months around, before she's born and right after she's born, I think emotionally was draining on me more than physically.
Yeah, I'm sure that it was, and I wonder if looking back on it, do you think maybe it was an emotional knee jerk reaction to maybe even consider, kind of quitting law school because you wanted the whole goal of going to law school was to be able to provide for yourself without doing something that was you felt like was going to kind of wear you out physically. It's kind of what I've been hearing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but
Did
at
you
least
not
for
see it?
me,
What is there maybe something about you were comfortable, like you knew that the construction path worked because that's what you saw your pops do, and like maybe law school was also something new and this maybe this different thing to you, and then boom. Even if you got it together, having a child is a big thing, and
yeah.
like, do you think maybe there was a little bit of that happening looking back?
Oh yeah, 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 and it was frightening, and uh, all the above, and and candidly, the idea of having a child was not really a discussion that we had. We're going to do that. It just was.
Yeah, and maybe that's why I didn't ask the question very well, because in the past you had said that you never really didn't necessarily planned on having a family, and it
Yeah,
really
yeah,
wasn't really wasn't on in the path as far as what you had considered at the time. And were you still in that, or did you say that y'all
yeah.
didn't do any
I said
family
there was
planning?
there was never really a discussion about that,
Yeah.
and so boom, you got the news, and you're startled, and it's after a while it becomes joyful. But the first knowledge of that is, I think for me, fear.
Yeah. Yeah. And particularly when you got this major academic studies that you're
Yeah,
trying to undertake. And
yeah,
and that's where we're gonna pause because I want to unpack that more because there's a complexity to all life experiences, to your life experience, right?
yeah,
That is to the essence of humanity, right? And that's what those experiences and how you perceive that is it's important to me, obviously, because we have this our kinship, right? But I think that it is universally important, and so I want to take the time to explore that. All right,
sure.
all right, Pops, man. I really appreciate you allowing me to do this with you and kind of belaboring this process. Peace and love. This has been Maxwell 3000 Productions. I am Maxwell 3000.